In the previous recap, Soma Kazuya, an orphan, was summoned to the Elfrieden Kingdom in another world as a payment to be given to a different kingdom known as the Grand Chaos Empire. Because the Elfrieden King was on the verge of declaring bankruptcy, and also because the Demon King Kingdom was expanding, and the one shared the border with the Demon King's domain was the Grand Chaos Empire. So, to keep them at bay, the Man King and the Demon King were at war, and another nation provided funds to the Grand Chaos Empire to keep the Demon Kingdom from expanding through war. Soma took it upon himself to save the kingdom from bankruptcy in order to avoid being a human supply, and he came up with some brilliant idea. So the king gave Soma his throne, making him king, and arranged an arranged marriage between his daughter and Soma. Moving on, Soma hired many people with talent and expertise in their fields, such as Pancho, a glutton who knew about food from various regions, whether it was cheap or expensive. Soma's new policies, however, were like string for corrupted nobles, and one of the three dukes named George was opposed to the new king. So those other nobles joined George in his rebellion to dethrone Soma. But one of the nobles named Glaive arrives in Soma with some shocking news. Duke George planned this rebellion to eliminate all corrupted nobles in one fell swoop. All of the corrupted nobles had lost their money and property, but they were still hiring mercenary from the mercenary kingdom. This implies that they still had some money, and if those mercenaries were captured during the rebellion, the mercenary kingdom would offer up the money to free them. That means that all of the money would be returned to the Elfrieden Kingdom, while the nobles would be apprehended and sentenced to death for rebellion. Two birds with one stone was such a brilliant plan that even Soma was impressed. He didn't want George, who had thought this far for the kingdom, to die like that, but it was still a necessary act to reclaim the money of the Elfrieden Kingdom. So the plan was initiated, but it will take some time to be implemented. So, for the time being, Soma orders the Forbidden Army to build a road. With a proper road, trading can increase, which will obviously benefit the kingdom. However, while he was on the inspection, news from Aisha's village arrived. Hearing about the landslide that occurred in her village, Soma wasted no time, and gathered a unit of the Forbidden Army and traveled to the god-protected forest in order to save as many survivors as possible. Aisha's heart was touched by Soma's quick response for her people. Aside from that, the three dukes of the Elfrieden Kingdom begin their meeting there. Naturally, Duchess Walter Excel supported Soma because she saw his efforts to turn the kingdom into a new leaf. But Duke Castor had a different opinion than Excel, and the rebel leader was Duke George Carmen. So clearly, Excel believed that George wanted to usurp the throne himself. But after years of service to the king, George simply wanted to dethrone Soma and restore Albert to the throne. And now, regardless of what Excel says, they've made up their minds, and even Duke Carter's daughter, Carla, wants to join the rebellion against Soma. While receiving this news, the rival kingdom of Amadonia planned to invade the Elfrieden Kingdom in order to occupy their land, and the king of Amadonia was a tyrant named Gaius. This rebellion and now the kingdom of Amadonia had continued, it could have impacted the kingdom of Elfrieden. So Soma decided to meet with the three dukes who had previously changed their minds. However, the three only Excel were on Soma's side, with Duke George and Duke Castor making it clear that they opposed Soma and wanted him dethroned. Soma was able to persuade Excel to support him because Juno was her granddaughter. Excel had sent her to spy on Soma in order to determine whether he was a worthy king or not. But Soma didn't mind that Juno came to him only to spy on him. So the rebellion begins, and Soma takes the initiative, erecting a mini fortress in front of Duke George's territory. Meanwhile, Gaius led his army and was about to invade Elfrieden's territory known as Altamora. But the lord in charge of that territory managed to buy some time by claiming that the citizens refused to surrender. As a result, he offered gold and bought time until noon the next day to open the city gate for Gaius. But it was all a Soma plan because he sent Excel there to buy as much time as she could because he was building the fortress in front of Duke George and the Amadonia was about to attack on their territory. Soma went to Duke Castor's location to capture the Air Force Army for their assistance. Seeing an entire fleet, Castor's daughter led a team of wyverns to attack. However, this was all a ruse, as Soma's true target was Castor. While Carla was fighting the ship, Soma approached Castor. Because Soma lacked combat skills, Aisha and Lisa fought Duke Castor and forced him to wear a slave collar. Soma was able to gain the support of the Air Force by defeating Castor. And with the Air Force on his side, Duke George's army was completely destroyed, so the nobles decided to use their citizens as human shields to protect their Sariesa. But Duke never had that thought in the first place. His true goal was to capture all the corrupted nobles, and he wore the slave collar himself. Obviously, because he started a rebellion against the king, He was guilty in public eyes because no one knew other than Soma about his plans. Because Gaius had led his army to Elfrieden, instead of capturing Duke George Soma, he immediately left for the kingdom of Amadonia. Gaius returned to his land after Soma led his army to Amadonia to capture it. However, while traveling through a narrow valley, he was attacked by Elfrieden soldiers led by Juna. A number of his soldiers fall in there, leaving only a small number of army to knight Elfrieden army. And now that Carla is also a slave of Soma for rebelling against Soma, he orders Carla to take out Gaius, which Carla did. But Amadonia wasn't much different from Elfrieden, and while the National Reserve didn't have much money, it did have a lot of weapons. Furthermore, the people were still wary of the Elfrieden army. The entire nation was like a strict military nation that didn't know anything about freedom. Soma started a show for the people in which a little girl and Juna performed. Finally, the national anthem of Amadonia was played. As a result, people began to get cozy, and more shops began to open. However, Soma taking over Amadonia would still result in total chaos. Despite the fact that Amadonia was at fault, the empire was wary of his move. There was a treaty presented among kings of various nations called the Mankind Declaration, which was signed by Amadonia, but Elfrieden remained neutral and did not sign. It was written that no nation could wage war against their neighboring kingdom in order to remain strong and not be defeated by the Demon Kingdom. Even though Amadonia was at fault, the Grand Chaos Empire refused to let Soma take over, so the Empress of the Grand Chaos Empire dispatched her own sister to settle the dispute between the two nations. And Soma had predicted this from the beginning. Soma knew and had already planned to leave the kingdom of Amadonia and give it to Oath's heir Julius, Gaius' son. But he will demand payment from them, and so, while on a trip with Juna in the kingdom of Soma, he came across Jean. And, just as he predicted, she arrived to force him to relinquish control of the kingdom of Amadonia. So, season 1 of the anime comes to an end, and for more recaps, please subscribe to the channel.